Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles when you
Chase
show
Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to it. Be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome into Operation Domination. We're back, baby, fresh off the expo. I don't know if you can tell, my voice is a little scratchy. I did get to recover a little bit, thankfully. Thank God I took off that extra day, gents, because that made all the difference in the world. What a party. What a party that was. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mater, joined here with Chase Thornton and Adam LaRue. We got a great episode in store for you guys. We talk about the best, the busts, and the sleepers. We got any best moments real quick from the expo out of you two?
Yeah, well, we got to keep them mentionable on air. So you got to give me a minute here.
There weren't too many of those that could be mentionable on air. That's how fun that was. So hopefully we'll be back, of course, next year. And
I do think actually from our network, Joe Frick at karaoke was definitely a highlight of the weekend. That man does not care when he's in front of people and there's a microphone in his face. So that was good work. So good work, Joe. Love you.
He did excellent, and Adam LaRue, to give him some credit, he went in at the after.
No, Joe though, that was incredible. That's a performer.
Got videos of both, so it's all good. We have the video evidence. It's all that matters. All right, so we're talking about the best, the bust, and the sleeper running backs in today's episode, continuing on with our August series as we get you prepared for these redraft leagues that are going to be coming up. I know some leagues are going on. The majority of you are probably not drafting, I would say, until the 23rd or the 30th. By then, we'll have the wide receivers and the tight ends done for you as well. But today, we have to bust here on Adam. Bust here on Adam. Why do you hate Bijan so much? Because, he's got Saquon still as number one, like a fool. I don't even know. And me and Chase are over here, we got Bijan Robinson at number one. So to tell me, Adam, what makes you think Saquon Barkley, when we haven't had a running back repeat in forever for RB1 overall, is going to be able to do it this time?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a fair argument. This tier is so freaking close, especially towards the top here. That's part of it. I think this is just such a great system fit for Saquon, and not that it isn't for Bijan, who I think the situation got even a little bit better, but the gap between what Saquon did last year and everyone else was just so large, relatively. I think on a points per game basis, in half it was something like 21.2 versus 19.5 being next, or somewhere along those lines. It's a reasonable gap. Just to where I felt like even if Saquon drops down a little bit on the efficiency with how many touches he got, which is a real concern, I'm a big fan of a really fast, athletic running back behind a really good offensive line with an offensive system that's not changing much. And, the offensive line, we lost one starter and Dickerson got hurt here in the preseason. It's going to be iffy to, get him back for week one, but you're going to have him for most of the season, at least, based on what we know right now. It's hard for me to leapfrog Saquon. To me, that's where it's just I have to build an argument to leapfrog him because of how good he was. And I just couldn't quite bring myself to get there.
Yeah, well, that's fair. Saquon Barkley had a completely crazy season. And just to give you guys the idea, at half-point PPR, which is typically we try to focus on this show because it was the best of both worlds, it was 21.2 points per game. Next was Jahmyr Gibbs at 19.8 and Derrick Henry at 19.2 to round out the top three for the entirety of the season. Chase, I'm gonna talk about Bijan real quick, and you can piggyback off of it and tell me what you think. But here's why I have Bijan number one, and that is because, from week 6 through 18, he was the RB1. He had 21.1 points per game. Jahmyr Gibbs was actually number two at just over 20 points per game during that stretch. So what was the difference? Is the first 5 weeks, he was only averaging 11.7 points per game those first 5 weeks. The offense wasn't quite clicking right. I think we were finding out slowly that Kirk Cousins was not going to be Kirk Cousins of old. That had a lot to do with it. But then we also saw increases when the Falcons decided they were going to stop including Algier to the level that they were. We saw his carry share, Algiers, drop from 32% to 27%. And then we saw Bijan's target share up to 15%. His snap share was over 75%. So all things you're looking for out of RB1s overall. And even though he still played most of those games with Kirk Cousins and only got the 3 games at the end with Michael Penix, he was still the RB1, even more so than Jahmyr Gibbs over that 2/3 of the stretch season down the end. And the other thing I just got to say is I am a believer in the whole Saquon Barkley over 400 touches historically, that being a problem. That bugs me quite a bit, especially when you're talking about Barkley, who does have a history of lower leg injuries coming through. Not only get too crazy on him, I have it number 4, which is the lowest of our crew. And if I'm being honest, I kind of wanted to find a reason to put him number 5, but I couldn't quite do that with CMC having his own injury risks as it is. But it's one of those things where, like, we haven't really seen anybody be able to buck that trend since LaDainian Tomlinson. That's it. That's the last time someone's been able to buck that trend in back-to-back seasons. So that kind of concerns me from that end too. I don't know, Chase, what do you want to add to that? Anything?
Well, like you said, it's not like we're all super far apart. I mean, he's got, Saquon and Bijan 1 and 2. I've got him. I've switched from him. So, I mean, Saquon, Bijan, you say tomato, I say marinara, whatever. I mean, they're pretty damn close. But I agree with what you just said there about Saquon Barkley. I mean, he did have a ton of touches last year. It was a perfect setup for him. I don't expect the Dickerson thing to have too big an impact on him. I think he's going to be back, sooner rather than later for them. And Saquon's still good, but the tush push did not, has not, and will not, and go away. So there is still that consideration there. And when you talk about Bijan, I don't think that we've seen the best of what Bijan Robinson has to offer yet. I don't think he has reached his peak. We talk a lot about, not drafting guys at their ceiling. Even drafting Bijan Robinson as running back 1 or 2 is not drafting him as what I think his ceiling can be and is going to be. You mentioned Algier, his share of the carries dropping every year. I think this offense and this coaching staff realizes what they have in Bijan Robinson. I think they're going to want to lean on him. If you look at his usage patterns last year between the games that Penix started, the games that Cousins started, it compares favorably. They're going to lean on him. They're going to lean on him, I think, and they should, because he's by far, I think, in terms of how he compares to the other weapons in the league at his position, he's their most talented weapon. So they should run with him.
No, I love that you say we haven't seen the best of him yet, because you're absolutely right. He's in year 3, age 23. That's typically the big breakout for these superstar running backs when we get the best in their prime to begin with. So we haven't seen the best in Bijan. So Adam, do you want to rebuttal to any of this after we dogpiled on you?
No, because like I said, I have a hard time dropping Saquon just because I feel like he has an injury risk, because really outside of Bijan, outside of Bijan, that's like the rest of the tier. And with Bijan, I have the bigger question about what the offense is specifically with Zach Robinson. I know there's an OC switch for Philadelphia as well, but I feel like it's a little bit different. So like the offensive philosophy as a whole probably isn't changing all that much. It will a little bit, let's be realistic, but I don't see a major identity shift here. And Robinson, while it got a lot better when he got Penix, and I still believe in him, there was some ugly coaching there in the first half of the season in Atlanta. Like, let's also be a little realistic. So it's just small issues with all of them. I think the one other thing I'll throw out there, this isn't necessarily Jalen Hurts' MO, but it wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world if anything you saw a positive regression in Saquon Barkley's targets. He had like 38 in his previous career low, and a healthy season was like 60. That could also help even some of the load if the rushing efficiency drops a little bit. So
I think they both approach or pass 400 opportunities again this season. So it being that, I'm willing to take the bet on youth with Bijan, but they're both going to be fine no matter where you take them.
No, yeah, absolutely, 100%. So and why do we argue about who's going to be 1, who's going to be 2? It's not just for fan fodder to have fun with it and everything like that. It's because, well, if you're in a situation where you're picking towards the top end of the draft, you might be sitting there trying to choose, and you don't want to choose the wrong one when you have the options for both, right? That's why we still have these arguments, even if it is a little bit nitpicky when we get down here to point them out. All right, so after that, I still want to talk about some of our best running backs. Each one of us in the outline actually had a different one in top 5 that neither one of the other two had in there. So I want to give us a chance to shout off that. So Chase, let's go to you first. You have Devon Achane in your top 5 while neither me or Adam do. So why don't you talk about why he cracks your top 5 this season?
This was tough. This was really tough because I think there are questions with almost everybody in the top 10 of the running backs. And I was giving myself arguments for Ashton Jeanty, for honestly, even Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs to be here. In the end, I went with Achane because, like I kind of just said with Bijan, of the other running backs in the top 10, we talk about all the time not wanting to draft a guy at his ceiling. I think that there are enough questions with everybody else in the top 10 that you can reasonably say you are drafting everybody else outside of Robinson at their ceiling, other than where Achane is when you're drafting him at cost. Taking every guy in the top 10 at cost is kind of where their ceiling is at for me. And just like Bijan, I don't think we've seen the best of what Achane has to offer. I think that there's more in the tank there. I think that with the changes that I think are going to have to come to that offense between Tyreek Hill getting older and Jonnu Smith being gone. So now they ostensibly don't really have a tight end because, I'm not going to count on the corpse of Darren Waller. I think that there's enough left on the bone there for Achane that we haven't seen his ceiling yet. And I think it's completely conceivable he cracks up into that top 5. So taking him at cost is, I think, one of the better values of the running backs that's going in the first 2 rounds.
Well, just a quick devil advocate question to that, because we heard Tyreek Hill come out and say in the press conference, and frankly, I had to say Tyreek Hill was not wrong, even though he should not have said that what he said, but basically saying like, hey, how do you get more efficient and keep the chains moving? You take Devon Achane out on 3rd and short or in the red zone and short. He did struggle in that area. He's not a big guy. He's not powerful. It does track that would be the case. Are you worried at all that they're going to look more at Jalen Wright or more at Ollie Gordon in that role and take away some of that usage?
No, I don't worry about it. I think that his talent is there. I like to bet on the talent. I'm not worried about that at all. I think this offense performs better if, and I realize that's a big if because we talked about it last week, putting your chips on the Tua Tagovailoa, to stay healthy is a risk. But I think that this offense can perform better. I think it has to perform better if they're going to keep their jobs around there. And I think Achane has to be a big part of that. So, like I said, in the end, I was willing to bet on him in terms of the value at cost versus everybody else.
Well, I will say if Tua stays healthy, a lot of it will probably be because he's getting the ball in his hands very quickly, therefore throwing it very short, therefore targeting Devon Achane. I can't argue with it too much there. Adam, you have Derrick Henry in your top 4. And to be fair, ADP is in line with Adam here. Neither me nor Chase have him in our top 5, but ADP agrees with Adam. So Adam, why do you see Derrick Henry as a top 4 running back in half-point PPR?
It's, I guess, kind of similar to Saquon. Like, I just look at all the factors and like nothing really changed. Like, you talk about, like, for most running backs, you would think that the carries were a problem. Well, I've thought that about Derrick Henry for 6 years. So at this point, like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do because he just kept doing it. He's kept getting the same workload and being healthy through it for 6 years. So, like, what am I supposed to keep knocking him for workload, or am I supposed to just assume that he's a freak and he's going to keep doing it? Like, this point, I think he's a freak. Same thing with the age. That at that workload, you'd think he's going to fall off the last 3 years. Guess what? He hasn't done. He got better last year, but so the workload's the same. The touchdowns are the same he's gotten for the last 6. Like, the only thing that really changed last year from the year prior, from that, is that he went to the Ravens, where they have a good offensive line and Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson's still there, and 4 out of 5 offensive line starters are still there. So, like, it's hard to say that anything of note changed for me. Like, I think he's going to get the workload that he did. I think he's going to, get probably pretty similar efficiency because he's got same offensive lineman. If anything, his center was in, I believe, year 2 going into last year. It's got another year in the NFL, can get a little bit better, and a center who I liked coming out of college. Like, I just don't see anything changing that much. And to your point, in points per game, he was third last year. He played his best ball at the end of the regular season last year. I think had like 350-yard plus games in the last 4. Like, I don't. Derrick Henry defies logic in the age sense and the usage sense, and that he's continued to do it. But once he's proven that he defies logic for so long, I feel like eventually I should just trust it. And I'm just going to trust it and leave him for.
Age 30, he averaged 5.9 yards per carry, best of his career. Like, yeah, he's like you said, defying the age barrier. I struggled not putting him in 5.
He turned 31 during the season too. So it's like he's been at 30 for 2 seasons now. So it's like, all right, you were supposed to fall off 4 years ago. Like, at this point, you're just, I don't know. I can keep betting on you to fall off and keep letting him wait. And like, there's just no point.
He is the Terminator. He is the Terminator. As our friend Amber would like to say, he's Skynet. That's her nickname for Derrick Henry. He is Skynet. Can't argue with it at all, 100%. And what he has going for him is that Lamar Jackson as a rushing quarterback is not a guy who gets a lot of rushing touchdowns for being a rushing quarterback. It does pave the way for Derrick Henry. Justice Hill was as involved as he possibly could have been, with Henry still doing his thing. The only thing that might be annoying about Henry is maybe in September when they're not trying to ground and pound as much yet. It takes a couple of games to really start getting that full value for him. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm not going to bet against them at all, even with the age apex, because there's just no point in doing so. Even though I have him outside my top 5, he is literally my RB6. So it's not like I have him far outside my top 5 either. So the guy I have that neither one of you have inside your top 5 would be Ashton Jeanty, the rookie. Raiders, all about Ashton Jeanty coming in. I actually got him at number 3. I have him 1 spot ahead of Saquon, 2 spots ahead of Christian McCaffrey. It was hard to get to that conclusion because we are talking about a rookie running back. And even when you look at Bijan, well, Bijan had all the hype, I think, as Ashton Jeanty as well. Didn't quite perform as an elite running back. He was still an RB1 his rookie season, but he was not an elite running back like we were hoping for. And it's kind of funny to me because when I look at Chip Kelly and Arthur Smith, I see 2 coaches that I really don't trust. 2 coaches that we knew were going to ground and pound. I think the difference for me is that I do trust Chip Kelly to, 1, not try to feature a Tyler Algier inside the 5 the way Arthur Smith did Bijan Robinson's rookie year, and also 2, have a point to get the running back involved, especially in the screen game with passes, something Arthur Smith did not do with Bijan Robinson. I think that's ultimately the difference here. And when I look at the Raiders offense, while they have Brock Bowers and you have the upgraded quarterback with Geno Smith and you have some competent wide receivers, we'll say at the very, very least, ultimately, I think the weight of the offense is not going to fall on Brock Bowers' shoulders. I think it's going to fall on Ashton Jeanty to keep those chains moving more so than anybody else. So when you look at Chip Kelly and you see LaShawn McCoy was an RB1, elite RB1 his first year, and RB1 his second year. That third year at the Philadelphia Eagles, it turned into a kind of a bit of a mess. There was DeMarco Murray and Ryan Matthews and Darren Sproles. Like, they kind of got caught in this 3-way split as a team. They were fine running the football and getting running backs involved, but they kind of got this 3-way split thing. It's not going to happen here with the Raiders. And what really makes me super excited about the idea of a running back with Chip Kelly was Carlos Hyde for the 49ers in 2016. Remember when Chip Kelly was the coach for the 49ers? I've tried to block that out, but I did have to look this up today because I remembered it. And Carlos Hyde, he only played 13 games that year, but he would have been on pace for a 1,300-yard season. This is Carlos freaking Hyde we're talking about here. So my point is that this is a system that will feature a running back. He's going to get a bell cow workload. I'm not worried about Raheem Mostert stealing significant touches. I'd be surprised if Mostert was more than 27, tops 30% at most, as far as his carry share goes, alongside of Ashton Jeanty. And unlike some of the other guys like Saquon, because of his touches last year, I worry. CMC, I kind of worry. Jahmyr Gibbs has David Montgomery to kind of worry about a little bit. I just don't have the age or the injury concern with a guy like Ashton Jeanty coming in for this year. So that's why he kind of cracks my top 5 there. I don't know if anybody wants to rebuttal to that real quick.
No, like I said, there were a lot of guys that I struggled with. He was one of the names that I wanted in my top 5. So was Henry. There are multiple arguments you can make for almost everybody in that top 10 there, because there are questions with most of them, I think. So, but I think the nice thing about that, knowing that, from the way I see it, is that, okay, I don't have to necessarily worry so much about running back because there's just as many questions here as there are there. I'm just going to take who I'm going to take, and then I'm going to concentrate my efforts, my worries elsewhere.
Okay. All right. So with that, that wraps up some of the best players that we wanted to talk about. Let's talk about some of our busts with according to our ranks versus ADP or ECR or however we want to look at this thing. And I want to start off first with Joe Mixon. And let's just throw Quinshon Judkins into that mix too. Adam and I both have, well, actually, no, I'm sorry. Chase, Adam, and I all have Mixon in our top 5 busts. Adam and I both have Quinshon Judkins in our top 5 busts. They might, I want to lead off the conversation with this. They might seem obvious. Like, I feel like at this point, the vibes, the narrative, the news, I feel like they should be obvious that they are guys that you don't necessarily want to target. But as of right now, and maybe this is just ADP not getting caught up, but there's a lot of drafts happening, so I can't imagine it's too far off. Joe Mixon is still being drafted as the running back 22 overall. Now, I mean, Adam, Chase, I don't know about you guys. I have Joe Mixon ranked at running back 62. Why do I have Joe Mixon ranked at running back 62? Because I don't think he's going to play this year. So I have something to read you guys, and then I'm going to get your thoughts on this. But I did talk to Dr. Brian Scott last night about Joe Mixon and the injury issue that he has. He mentions along with having a long history of those foot injuries, including a Liz Frank injury that's ended his season then when he missed 10 games back in 2020. He's looking at this. This could be this weird injury that won't heal. It could be another Liz Frank injury that is maybe re-aggravated or even worse than 2020. He's like, if that's the case, that would lead to him being on the IR and not suiting up to play at all this season. So I am essentially ranking this as if Joe Mixon is not going to be playing or playing very much at all this season. So I'll get you guys' reactions to that since you both have him as bust as well. Probably not as low as me.
So what you're saying is that Nick Chubb isn't dead and we haven't seen the last of Daria Gumbawale. Nice.
Well, so let's talk about that since we are talking about Joe Mixon. What are the alternatives, right? If that is going to be the case, or which should you be looking at? Because I'm not putting 2 red cents on Nick Chubb. Like, if we talk about guys who I think are toast due to injury, that's a dude. I know we all want to root for him. I know he's come back from crazy injuries before. I think this is not in like, oh, like he missed a year or he's 2 years removed from the ACL. Like, no. That was his leg was split in 2 on the other side of the field. That's what that was. This is not. No, I'm not putting on Nick Chubb. What I will say, and I want to get Adam's remarks on this because it kind of falls with, the rookie running back coming in Dynasty. I have to pay more attention to Woody Marks than I was trying to. I was not a fan of Woody Marks coming out of USC. I think the running back who just kind of is what he is. Maybe he can give you a little bit in the passing game. I don't think there's anything special about him. I did not have a 4th round grade on him. I had a 6th round grade on him coming out of the draft. They still took him there. But now it's getting to the point where it's like, look, the work's got to go somewhere. Like, do we look at Woody Marks a little bit more? Like, this kind of leads into the sleeper conversation. But Adam, what do you think?
I'm kind of, I don't mean to say this, I'm kind of glad that Chris isn't here to hear me say this, but I think it's going to be a split between Dameon Pierce and Woody Marks.
Oh, woof.
And as an addition to that, I think Dameon Pierce might be the better back. And I don't like that even a little bit, but I kind of think it's true.
You're selling my boy Dare short, dude. You're selling him short. No, it's a mess. If Mixon's not healthy, it's a mess. There's just no way around it.
It is terrible.
It is.
But I think it's true.
It's how they've built their roster. It's not our fault.
Yeah.
No, 100%. I just think people are just still latch on the name Nick Chubb. I'm with you. I don't think there's anything there. And I'm really concerned about this Joe Mixon issue. Because let's think about it this way. Even if you were to draft him, let's say 2 rounds lower than what he's going, which means you're still spending a 7th, 8th round draft capital on him. And you do that with the idea that he will be healthy to play. He's an older running back who hasn't been able to practice at all during training camp. Like, I know running backs don't play preseason games, but they certainly practice, and you want them in full-time tip-top shape heading into the season. When you're an older player, I don't care if it's running back or wide receiver, you don't get to practice in training camp. It does not typically bode well for your production on the field, regardless, even if he's able to suit up out there anyway. So there's a multiple. Go ahead.
I think that there's a merit to say, like, the only reason he like maybe would have skirted away from being a bust candidate injury regardless is that there's not anyone else in this backfield. And I think that's probably why his ADP is not dropping, is because there's nowhere, like nobody's like, I'm going to give it to this other Texans running back. But like his efficiency last season wasn't good. This offensive line has somehow managed to get worse. Like if there was a backup even mildly compelling, I would want to, he'd be on my bust list anyways, even if he was healthy. Like, I don't think was a good running back last year. I think all the other options were bad. Like,
I'm just putting this out there. Not that I love this idea any more than anybody else, but Chubb's going like in the 12th round right now. Does that, Woody Marks is almost free. He's going 215 overall right now. It's like, I mean, you can get either one of them pretty much if you want them, but does that sway any of your thinking or no, knowing that it's a 12th round pick for a possible starting running back in the league, if not necessarily on your roster as a flex option?
No, I mean, it doesn't for me anyway. Like I would rather just take Woody Marks free than bother wasting any kind of draft capital whatsoever on Nick Chubb. And maybe I'll be the one who's wrong about that. I don't know, but that's how confident I am that I'm not going to be upset that Nick Chubb's not on my team, frankly.
I do like the idea of taking Marks proactively as that last position player you take on your roster, rather than trying to wait and fight the waiver wire for him after week 1 or 2 when it becomes clear who actually is leading this backfield. So, yeah.
Well, why don't we get into this conversation? We'll hold off on Judkins for a second, Adam, you and I, because Chase, you have Breece Hall as one of your busts. But here's kind of, and you can get into why Breece Hall is going to be one of your busts, but here's kind of the interesting thing is that there's a lot of people talking about Breece Hall as a possible trade candidate. Now, people want to bring up Dallas, but if Joe Mixon's toast and Nick Chubb's toast and Houston wants to make the playoffs, could that be a possibility? I don't know. So talk about Breece Hall being a bust, but what would change if let's say he did get traded to a Houston Texans or a Dallas Cowboys?
If Breece Hall went to either of the other two places, I don't necessarily know that I would change where I have him ranked very much. I still like Breece Hall as a player, but Breece Hall for me is that guy that I would rather have on my real team than on my fantasy roster. It's just kind of how it's worked out. It seems like late, during his career. Here's my biggest problem with Breece Hall. It's not that he's not going to get looks. I know he's going to be the lead runner on that team. I'm sure he's going to be the lead runner. He was 4th in receptions among running backs last year. Okay. But part of the problem with Breece Hall is that his yards per attempt, his fantasy points per game have come down every year that he's played so far. Last year, he had a little bit of a fumbling problem. He had 6 fumbles last year. He only lost 2 of them, but those 6 fumbles doubled his career total to that point. Okay. So I'm not necessarily sure that he's progressing and getting better, but my biggest thing is that his quarterback is going to be Justin Fields. And while I like Justin Fields as a fantasy quarterback, he hasn't been a fantasy kingmaker for his running backs in his career so far. Let's look back at the years that at the periods of time that he's been a starting quarterback, see what his running backs have done. 2021 with the Bears, David Montgomery was his guy. Montgomery ended up as the running back 21 overall. He was a running back 17 in points per game. Okay. Ran for 849 yards, 7 touchdowns. That's not terrible. 42 catches out of 51 targets. And then Damian Williams and not Justin Herbert, but Khalil Herbert added another 30 catches on top of that on 39 looks. So you had 90 targets going to the running back position from Justin Fields that first year. That's pretty cool. 2022 though, Montgomery took a step back. He was running back 27 in points per game overall that following year. Even though he only slipped by 2 points overall, points per game, he dropped by 10 slots there. Only had 5 rushing touchdowns. His rushing yards went down. And his looks from the quarterback and the looks from the running back at the running back position in general went down. Then you get to 23, and it was a full-blown committee. It was D'Onta Foreman. Montgomery was gone by that point, but you got D'Onta Foreman, you've got Khalil Herbert, and you had Rashawn Johnson. Johnson ended up with a plurality of the targets on that team. Herbert ended up with the plurality of the carries on that team. Foreman ended up with the plurality of the fantasy points on that team, even though he was less productive in terms of yards per rush than any of the rest of them. It was a full-blown committee. And then last year, he starts for the first 6 games for the Steelers. Najee Harris averaged running back 26 finishes for those 6 weeks, averaged just under 11 points per week in a half-point PPR setting. His best finish was running back 10 in week 6, when he scored 19.2 fantasy points for you. With Justin Fields there, we know that he is going to run the ball himself. We know that they should call running plays for him because that's how he's best used. And I'm worried that they're not going to throw it to Breece Hall as much as we would like Breece Hall to get the ball. He had a good, decent year last year in that respect, and I'm worried that takes a step back. We're drafting the dude at running back 13, which is about kind of where he finishes all the time. I'm just worried that he's not going to get there, that he'll end up being a more like a low running back 2 for us rather than a high running back 2. But you're having to spend a early third round, mid third round pick on him. And I don't want to deal with that. So that's why I have him ranked number 1 on my bust list.
Yeah, and I think after a while, and Adam, you can tell me if you agree with this or not, but I think after a while, you have to believe the coaching staff when they're saying the same thing over and over again. I know we don't always believe coaching staffs, but they have been pretty consistent in that Braylon Allen's going to get touches. Isaiah Davis is going to get worked in on some occasion. Like they're pretty hell-bent on this being a rotation.
I talked about 2023 being a full-blown committee in Chicago with Foreman, Herbert, and Johnson and how they use those guys. Would it shock anybody if Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen were somehow got like most of the targets or most of the carries, but then Hall ended up being the top fantasy scorer? I worry about that situation with Breece Hall, even though I love him as a player.
It's a fantastic player. That's what kind of makes it tough. But I mean, Adam, let me ask you this. If Breece Hall were to get traded to Houston or Dallas, would he be a top 10 running back at that point in your mind?
Yeah, I think so. Especially with Dallas, I would say. What's tricky with Houston is it still has all kind of the other issues. Like that line sucks. Are a lot of mouths to feed, not the running back room, but as far like the whole dump off thing, like there's not a lot of room to get targets there, I guess is what I'm getting at. So Houston has a lot of weird conundrums on offense. I mean, we also have to face it. Stroud is an extremely talented quarterback. I don't think any of us are off of that, but there's the reality that passing touchdowns hasn't necessarily been there. So it's not like you're going like, oh, there's going to be, we'll get these receiving touchdowns. It's like, where does he quite fit in? And Joe Mixon got rushing touchdowns, but outside of that, he was a 4 yards per carry back. And I think Hall would be a little bit better. It's just the running game is still going to be an uphill battle because of that offensive line, I guess is where I'm ultimately landing. But Dallas would be awesome. And I certainly think that I would be higher on Breece Hall if he went to Houston than I am on him on the Jets.
Okay. And that's fair too. I think that's what I wanted to get at as well. Dynasty wise, though, by the way, love Breece Hall because wherever he winds up next year, the talent is definitely there to dynamo. Anyway, so let's get back to redraft. So Quinshon Judkins is on both of me and Adam's bust list, and I took it at the top of the segment and said I thought this was both of him and Mixon were obvious candidates. But again, even with Quinshon Judkins, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's still kind of being drafted a little too high to be considered necessarily like off anybody's radar. ADP is RB 32, 86 overall. I said I had Joe Mixon ranked at RB 61. I have Quinshon Judkins ranked at RB 62. Okay, just to give you guys an idea there. Again, same kind of mindset. I don't know if he's going to play this season. At least with Joe Mixon, I know injury-wise, he may come back. But with Cleveland, not only they're not signing Quinshon Judkins, but now this trial's not getting speed up. It sounds like that could take a while. They're not going to sign him until the trial's done. And then we top it all off. Even when that gets done, you still have to get into practice with a contract, get him moving all this time with a rookie who hasn't been there for spring or summer or anything in between. Like, I just think this could really well just be a lost season for Quinshon Judkins, even if the criminal stuff does pander away. And even when he gets the court stuff out of the way, you still have to deal with the fact that the NFL would likely come down with a suspension anyway. So I just look at it like, look, I'm washing it up as I don't think Judkins is going to play much or at all this season. Probably the same reason I have for Joe Mixon. Adam, why do you have him?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same reason. And at this point, he'd still be a rookie coming in, like learning a playbook from scratch because he's not even under contract. It's not like that, like, here's all the stuff. Like, let's get you, like, we're talking to you, like you're in the meetings, you're just not on the field. Like, you're just outright, like, he might have a playbook or something, but he's not in meetings. Like, he doesn't truly know the offense, like, at all to this point. I mean, running back isn't the most complicated position in that regard in the world, but nonetheless, like, if he came back tomorrow, it'd be an uphill battle, especially with how underrated Jerome Ford was in terms of like yards per contact after attempt and elusiveness like last season. We'll get to there, but like it's tough. It really is. And I don't think he's coming back tomorrow. I don't think he's coming back for a while. To your point earlier though, about, the potential of ADP just not catching up yet on these guys. I had to pull it up while you were talking. Judkins went in round 7 and Mixon went in round 8 of my draft night out league. So at the expo when we were drafting with people who like paid to go draft at the expo. So like think the nerds of the industry, right? It fell from ADP a little bit, but not as much as I think you or I would drop him.
Well, clearly not, because I already have him in the 60s where I'm like,
yeah,
I'm not even thinking about these guys at all. Making a point to say that too. So that's why I thought it was worth warranting the conversation. But let's flip that to the other side, because there's a sleeper that we do want to talk about, because so we're not Quinshon Judkins, right? All 3 of us, I believe, have Jerome Ford in our top 5 of our sleepers. I know I have him as my number 1. Chase, why don't you lead us off with why Jerome Ford needs to be a sleeper on people's boards heading into the season right now?
Well, he's the incumbent, first off. I mean, he's the guy who was the running back last year. There was the Chubb thing going on last year there with that injury, the horrific injury that he had. And so I was leaning on Jerome Ford in a lot of places last year, because I was like, okay, well, I know he's going to have a job for half the season. And then he kind of never really kind of let go of it overly. But this is an offense that I think no matter who plays quarterback, and that's where the big questions I think on this offense are, we're all wondering who's going to play quarterback and how good are they going to be. I think they're going to want to rely on that run game. They need to, because I think they need to take pressure off of whomever is playing that quarterback position for them. And I think Ford's the one who's best set up right now to handle that, based on his knowledge of the offense. We just talked about that with Judkins, based on the idea that he doesn't have to come off the field on 3rd down. He can kind of do everything that you need him to do in that offense. He's not overly great at any of it, but he's not killing them in any of it either. Honestly, if Dylan Sampson could grab this situation by the short and curlies and run with it, pun intended, there's an opportunity here for that kid to really kind of leapfrog his draft status. But in the absence of that, and knowing that Jerome Ford is the incumbent there, and he's surprised us before, and he has been a usable fantasy asset when he has been a starter on this team, I'm willing to take him a lot sooner than running back 48 on the board. I'm willing to guess that, yeah, he can be a low-end RB2 or a flex option at least, instead of a, borderline questionable running back 4 like we're drafting him as right now.
Well, and Adam, I don't know what you want to add to this conversation, but here's what I'll say is that the last 2 years, he's been an RB3. He's either been RB25 or RB34 in points per game when he's been given those opportunities to play. It just seems like for whatever reason, Kevin Stefanski doesn't want to give him like a huge role. Like they look to try to give some carries away to Donta Foreman. When Nick Chubb did come back, they overly gave carries to Nick Chubb for absolutely no reason. But he was efficient last year. He was over 5 yards a carry. Like Jerome Ford is no slouch, and he's a decent pass protector who can catch the ball. And that's why, and honestly, what do you think about this one? I don't think Dylan Sampson can really overtake Jerome Ford in any area. I don't trust him as a pass protector, so I don't think it's going to be in receiving game. I think Dylan Sampson has a lot to prove as far as being a runner between the tackles when he's not facing 5-man boxes that he was facing in Tennessee. We know Jerome Ford can do that. Like, other than he hasn't necessarily always held up, Jerome Ford, that is, under a huge work share, he's been productive. Like 2023, he had 9 total touchdowns when he had to take over for the majority of the season. This is no slouch that we're talking about here. And he's being drafted as what? He's in the RB 48 right now. Like, even with all the news about Quinshon, even though Dylan Sampson has a lot to prove, like, I don't know. What do you make of all that?
I think that if you wait on running back, you go heavy at receiver earlier, like what have you. I think this is like one of the guys that you're dying to walk away from drafts with. Like, I mean, yeah, like what you mentioned all holds up. I think, look, the not giving him the work share last year thing in particular, I think is pretty easy to chalk up to like, this was a dead in the water team by the time that Chubb came back, and it was like, what can we do to bring anyone into this stadium? Like,
Chubb's a franchise legend.
Like, yeah, like the Nick Chubb, bring him back, like whatever. And to your point, I think I like Dylan Sampson coming out a little bit more than you do. However, I think it's pretty clear that they drafted him to be the change of pace to Quinshon Judkins. So I think the reality is they've been preparing Dylan Sampson this entire time to be a change of pace back. And I just don't think that changes. I think he continues to be a change of pace back, the zoomy guy to hit the outside here and there, 5-7 carries a game. And they're not built to throw the heck out of the ball, so they're someone's gonna need to take some carries, and I just don't know who else it would be. I think that they were hoping it would be Quinshon Judkins. Unfortunately, that's not reality. So you've got a 5 yards per carry, back in the NFL last season on your roster. I imagine he'd be the guy that you're handing the ball off to.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And if Joe Flacco was going to be the quarterback of the offense, well, that's the best case scenario that we can hope for. And it's looking more and more like it's going to be that case every single day. So yeah, Jerome Ford, a big sleeper for us there. So let's piggyback off here and let's talk about a couple of our other sleepers since we're on the conversation. So one of the guys that you two both have as your sleeper, I do not, but I do have the potential handcuff as one of my top 5 sleepers. Let's talk a little DeAndre Swift, Kyle Monangai actions. I'll let you guys dive in first on the DeAndre Swift side of why you think he's actually a sleeper, and kind of quantify why he is that. Because I think some people might be asking, like, how is DeAndre Swift actually a sleeper?
I think for whatever reason, there's DeAndre Swift fatigue among drafters in fantasy football. I think people just are kind of wanting to move on from him. So I think people are discounting his chances in this offense this year, forgetting that the last time we saw him with Ben Johnson, he actually was not a terrible running back. He was a top 20 guy in 2 of those 3 years in terms of points per game. He was a top 13 running back under Ben Johnson in points per game at 1.2. If there is a guy on this team that's going to take that Jahmyr Gibbs role, or is going to kind of be the lightning striker, assuming that those roles transfer from Detroit to Chicago, and I think that's maybe a big assumption for all of us. But if there's a guy that's built to be the Jahmyr Gibbs role, it's going to be DeAndre Swift. They were comfortable letting DeAndre Swift go in Detroit, but it's because they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jahmyr Gibbs is a pretty good dang weapon. Okay. But the other part of it is that honestly, even if there is that absence of roles, I think that DeAndre Swift is the best of the 3 guys they have there right now to be that every down back if there's going to be a workhorse. And I'm not saying he's going to be, but I just think that there's enough there. He's being taken as running back 24, and he has outperformed that under Ben Johnson in the past. I don't see him doing worse than that as the lead guy in a Ben Johnson offense, whether it's all his work or most of his work. So I like the idea of taking DeAndre Swift, and I'm willing to spend the 59th overall pick on him to get him as my RB2. I see nothing wrong with that at all, and I would be happy with that because it means I can load up on other positions before that.
So Adam, what's your piggyback on that?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think, look, probably, not going to just be Jahmyr Gibbs. There's a reason Jahmyr Gibbs replaced DeAndre Swift, right? Yes. Let's, live in reality. But this is a running back who last year got 250 attempts and then 50 targets in an offense that was not a real NFL offense. I don't think any of us are thought the Bears were particularly exciting in their play calling department last year. And I think they're going to be a lot better this year, at least when it comes to, the minutia of things. It's an offensive line that is like a night and day difference from where it was last year. So to draft him at or lower than where he finished last year just feels kind of crazy when it seems like on the depth chart, who I'll give you your transition, on the depth chart, the guy behind him is a 7th round pick. Like, if your backup's the 7th round pick, I'm going to lean on, at worst case, you have a role. It just, for me, to take your transition right there away. But the guys going in front of him get a little bit silly, and that's kind of where I think he's a sleeper. Like, to our point with Mixon there a minute ago, he's going behind Mixon right now, which is a little psychotic, at least, again, based on ADP. I think Pacheco has bigger concerns than he does. I think Harvey has way bigger concerns than he does. I think David Montgomery has bigger concerns than he does. Like, I think, is he the biggest sleeper of all time? No, but I think he's a good 5, 6, 7 spots below where he should be.
I think, like your point with Jerome Ford, I think that he's a guy that if you want to try and go like hero running back, I mean, you still got to spend like buy a 6th round pick on him. You've got to take him earlier than true like 0 RB hero RB territory. But he's a good guy that you can wait on. He's a good guy you can wait on to get your second guy.
At his cost, how many guys are you going to get that have the potential for 300 opportunities? Because he had on the dot 300 opportunities last year. Like,
no, I was going to say 6th round. That's about where you would start to take a running back if you're going 0 running back there after you take the wide receivers and tight ends. So
if you're going 0 running back, yeah,
it's a 100%. And I just want to play devil's advocate for the people out there who are like, well, didn't he get benched Ben Johnson's first year? Yes, he did. He only started 8 games that year, played 14. He still came away with 8 total touchdowns and 900 total yards in that little size of the sample size. That was the year he missed a couple games due to injury as well. So I guess the point being is that, well, even if Ben Johnson doesn't love him, he's a starter for now, and he was still productive on a per game basis when he had him. So I don't care.
And it's who he has.
And to be honest, I think he's a much different player than at that point in his career. Like, he's much more willing to run between the tackles. He used to always want to jump to the outside, always go for the long play. I think he's a lot more mature as a running back now.
He changed his attitude the following year when he went to Philadelphia and he rushed over 1,000 yards. And he showed it then that he looked like he was like, look, I know what I have to do now. And he's still never been superstar level, but he's been a pretty solid guy. To you guys' point, pretty solid last year too. I do also have him ranked 5 spots ahead of ADP. I have him ranked at RB21, so I'm right in line with you guys. The piggyback off of that, though, Kyle Monangai, never doubt my Rutgers running backs. Never, ever, ever. They will always find a way. All right. I mean, we tend to forget about Ray Rice, but he was pretty good before everything snafu'd and over there. And Pacheco has been awesome. Monangai is going to be the next guy. I don't want to get too carried away with Monangai and too carried away with practice reports and stuff like that. But the idea is that he was getting most of the reps with the second team offense. Now, and the reason why I don't want to get carried away is because they still made a point to say, well, Roshan still seemed to be with the first team offense when it came to the goal line scenario. And Roshan showed a knack last year. Look, he can punch it in. He might be the Mike Davis of this team. I don't know. And if that is the case, that would hurt any potential, let's say, flex value Monangai may have alongside DeAndre Swift being on the field at the same time. That is true, because you're going to need, if you want to be a true David Montgomery role, you're going to need those touchdowns. Speaking of David Montgomery, I know Monangai he's about 10 pounds lighter than Montgomery was coming out, but they're about the same size. Ran about the same 40. Both have a very similar north-south gap scheme, hit the hole and go with some power and some pop. Like, very similar runners. I think there's a reason why Ben Johnson has talked up Monangai, has liked the guy, and reminds him of such. I got him ranked at RB 57. Excuse me. ADP's got him at RB 64. This is a guy you can get in the back end for free. We're talking about guys that maybe you're taking your last pick of your draft on. If Roshan Johnson, who outside of the red zone has really not been able to pop, and I was a big Roshan Johnson fan, I'm disappointed as anybody that he hasn't been able to find a way to pop. But Swift, who does have an injury history, who does need to come off, who can't handle like a Kyron Williams or Chase Brown level type of workload, does need to come off the field, and Ben Johnson would want to be able to do that anyway. And Monangai shows that he's actually more pop than Roshan, which is going to be hard to do between the 20s. And then who's to say with his power and what he did at Rutgers, which he was a very good inside the 5 player at Rutgers too, that he can't overtake Roshan, and then that role has some flex opportunity to come along with it potentially. So I'm looking at Monangai, like, we're talking about some back end guys who might pop. That's somebody on my radar. What say you?
I took him in my draft night out league. I'm excited about him. I think that he's, for a late round dart throw, he's a great option. And I kind of, to your point, like, yes, Roshan has shown a knack for being good in the red zone. Monangai in college showed a knack for getting in the red zone. He got like 22 scrimmage touchdowns over his last 2 seasons at Rutgers. So, I mean, it's not like this isn't a good red zone option. Look, I think that the number one knock on him coming out was speed, and this is not a role where that is a requirement. So with that
was said, my take on it.
I think it's a perfect fit for him, and they clearly like him. They moved him up the depth chart quicker than, I mean, if you've been watching around the league, rookies have not climbed depth charts quickly, and he's climbed the depth chart very quickly.
I think he went to the one place where there was a role that he could carve out for himself or that he could take and win. I think draft wise, he went to the absolute perfect place because speed wise, there wasn't a lot of, I wasn't big on him coming out of the draft. I know it's the birthplace of college football, but I'm not like hanging my hat on Rutgers running backs necessarily.
Missing out, bro. You're missing out.
One place though, he went to the one place where, if he was going to carve himself out a role and be fantasy relevant, not just like get himself on the field occasionally, it was in Chicago. There, you can get him for free, and it's the kind of role where we didn't necessarily all see this coming with Montgomery until it kind of came, or with Jamal Williams actually before that. We didn't necessarily see that coming until it happened. If that happens with Monangai, wouldn't you rather be the guy that has him before everybody sees it than not? And when you can get him for free, why not take him?
Yep, totally agree with that. So just a quick couple honorable mentions real quick on the sleeper standpoint. Braylon Allen right now is going as running back 53. We talked about Breece Hall. If Breece Hall is not going to be the guy or be as productive as we think he's going to be, it's because of what we would talk about. Braylon Allen's going to get more involved, especially in the red zone. Here's what I'll say. He wasn't super efficient last year, but if he can find a way to get a little bit more pop, he's a bowling ball of a man. I do want to mention that we all had J.K. Dobbins as a sleeper as well. ADP going RB 37. I don't see any reason, I think you guys all agree, why he can't be a flex option alongside RJ Harvey with a likely 55-40 split, maybe 55-45 split between the two. Like, very easy to see that regardless of who's in front and who's not. Yeah, anybody else you guys? Oh, Tank Bigsby, actually. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I do have to have Tank Bigsby as a sleeper on here. I've never been a fan of the guy. I don't love with it, but I also think people are overblowing the idea that Travis Etienne had all the first team reps in that first preseason games. I think that's complete overreaction to what was happening in that guy.
I think I'm pulling back on all three of those dudes, to be honest with you. I don't want a whole lot to do with that running back core this year until we see how it shakes out.
Well, here's what I was saying. Bigsby's going AP RB 41, and then Bashaw Tutin's going in the 50s. Like, I want to take a share of that just because I know whoever does pop is going to pop pretty strong. But with that, is going to wrap it up for today's show. Hope you guys all enjoyed it. Make sure you download Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app and subscribe to the Fantasy Football Advice YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. We'll be back next week talking about our best busts and sleeper wide receivers. So make sure you tune back in for that. We'll see you all again real soon. We are here. FantasySportsAdvice.com, offering the best fantasy sports social media platform. Why join endless Discord communities or the trolls of Reddit? Fantasy Sports Advice is a community designed to help you win with 24/7 support. Go to FantasySportsAdvice.com and become a pro member for unlimited access. Again, go to FantasySportsAdvice.com today.